It's your first day, kid. Today, a woman gets hit. Day after that, it's a murder. You got 20 years of days. This job takes enough out of you. Don't take it home.
Ain't nothing like a cup of Brooklyn's finest.
Yeah, this movie, Brooklyn's Finest, shouldn't this be in quotes like it's sarcastically talking about the cops as Brooklyn's
I think
finest?
that's what the title insinuates anyway.
Because these are,
Brooklyn's Finest, colon and a P to simulate that it's irony, that it's internet sticking its tongue out. Brooklyn's Finest. Wink.
Well, it is Anton Fuqua, who clearly does not feel good about the police.
yeah, this is the only guy who hates the cops more than I do.
I know, he hates them so much, he's going to make a movie about him.
Brooklyn's Finest, my ass. The original title.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is Anton Fuqua, who directed one of my favorite all-time movies, Training Day. Which
Really?
is,
No one knew that at Spill.
No, I never let it know.
I was going to say Ernest Goes to Camp.
Everybody has missed those like 1.5 million references I made before.
There's actually a member who's keeping count. Have you noticed that?
He just started on a random number. I've been keeping count, and I'm much higher than what he's saying. No,
Isn't this also the guy that did that lousy King Arthur movie?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, did he? Was he
Yeah.
the one?
Yeah, he did. But
Well,
no,
hey, the man can make a movie about cops.
yeah, when he's making a movie about crooked cops, he knows what he's doing. Are just cops who are just bad at what they do, period. We cover the lives of 3 cops. They're interconnected only by the criminals and other cops that they just run into every now and then. One is a cop who's on the brink of retirement. Another is an undercover cop who has formed this bond with his target. And the last one is a narcotics officer who, because of all kind of family problems, is tempted to do some illegal
he's just
activity.
desperate.
Yeah, he's just desperate.
I mean, you
Yeah.
look up desperate in the dictionary, and his picture is right there.
Yeah.
Well,
Right,
yeah, he's
right next to Cyrus, of course.
It's Ethan Hawke sweating his ass off.
just gritting his teeth and like, oh, I'm gonna do something illegal here. Don't stop me, my family. But no, it's really great performances in this film. I mean, especially by Don Cheadle and Ethan Hawke. I mean, when I saw this, I thought Ethan Hawke was incredible, man. I mean, he really is the standout guy in this.
And by nature of saying that, you're also pointing out what's unbalanced here, which is that even though all 3 characters are written really well, Gere just kind of is there.
See, I completely disagree with you.
Really?
Yeah, because to me, seeing Richard Gere in this, because it made me think of him way back when he did Internal Affairs. And I'm like, you know what? Richard Gere has the ability to play an intense character like this, who has a lot of dimension to him, who everybody thinks is a coward, but he's got his own thing going on. He was probably the character I liked the most. And yet, I'm like, look at all the shitty romantic comedies he's been in, wasting himself and his career all this time. I'm like, dude, if you have the ability to do this, you need to be doing this more often.
I don't know. I think he could have been much better. I know he's capable more than he gave in this film.
Well, it's funny because in this movie, it's like, wow, we've seen all these other people in cop films, but what do they do with Richard Gere? They make him interact with whores. And one scene after another, and it's like, I'm sure he's like,
Maybe that's why I like him so much.
he's like,
You can identify.
No, he's already like, didn't I do this already? I'm trying to shape this
They
image.
just got a thing where, even when he's a cop, he's trying to save prostitutes.
Yeah.
You make one movie in which you fall in love with a whore, and for the rest
You got to
of
do
your
it
life,
in every goddamn movie.
I know. They're
Chicago.
like,
Yeah.
They're
Come
like,
on.
What if it's his fault?
I was gonna say, maybe
what
he
if it's
asked for
like,
that.
You get to play a gritty cop. Can we work in whores? Because I started my career playing a male prostitute, and then I saved a woman prostitute, and now I've got to kind of bring that all together.
well, he's kind of like, yeah, well, can we work in whores? And they're like, well, we don't have room in the script for that. No, I mean, on the set. Can we just bring them in? Can we, for my trailer, can we bring them in?
Oh, you want the Ben Affleck clause.
Yeah. And some red M&Ms.
That's a crotch services table.
Oh, damn.
Come on.
I'm the only one who laughs at this shit today.
Man.
It's like when he makes one of those jokes, everybody's like, oh, and I'm the one that's in the background who's like, yeah.
Because it's funny and you have taste. So.
Yeah, you like Fat Albert and the crew.
Easily amused.
Also, speaking of the acting, even though it was a small part, I thought Wesley Snipes was awesome in this movie.
Yeah, he really was.
I mean, it was
actually.
like him reminding us, like, oh yeah, this guy actually can act when he's not doing those shitty direct-to-video action flicks.
I would have expected him to just phone it in, especially since shouldn't he be in jail? But
I'm telling
He phoned it in and it was a collect call.
Literally found in.
It's one of those times where it's like, well, we'll let this appeal process go slowly because what we'd really like is your money, and the only way you're going to get money is by starring in movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you notice those cornrows in his head, it looked like he got straight out of prison and went to the set.
That's true.
In fact, in the movie, I was like, is he a guy out of prison or is he a dyke out of prison? I can't tell.
He was walking all funny.
Well, maybe that's why his acting was so good, because he was playing a guy who just got out of prison, and he may have just walked out of prison to show up on the set that day.
I got real world experience. Yeah.
Man, Wesley, you got your lines down. Oh, was there a script? I'm sorry, I was just talking about myself.
Yeah, no, Wesley Snipes did great. There are some performances in this movie which were bad, but I still enjoyed them, and they didn't fit in the movie. But if they had been in an over-the-top cop movie, like this is something that would have fit in something like Cop Out, had that been a better movie. Ellen Barkin comes in, and she just plays this like hard as nails.
Yeah, she's chewing up scenery.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, she's been
chewing up Metamucil at this point.
I know, yeah, just chew it up. I think, like somebody chewed up her face and put it back on. I mean, she's an FBI agent who comes in. I mean, she's just over the top with her role, but it really is good to see. I mean, she's a character that you really love to hate, even though I would have to say it's one of the weakest performances in the movie.
Part of the problem is one of the issues with this film is that there are a lot of cliches of the genre that are thrown in, and most times they work past them because the performances are so good, or they do different stuff with it than you'd expect. But she was one of those that was like, come on, man, this is such old hat.
How's Alyssa? Your wife? Oh, I'm sorry, that's soon to be ex-wife, right? Get out.
It's all right. Thank you. Just give us a minute, please.
I heard she's remodeling your house on a cop salary, huh? You know, a whole lot of cash has passed through your hands over the last 2 years.
I ain't stole so much as a nickel since I've been on the job. You ain't got...
Oh, you do not want me to put a microscope up your... Because if I do, I will keep looking until I find something.
Until you plant something?
Watch that. Now you listen to me. You think you're a tough guy? Because you did undercover at Clinton Correctional? You even survived a little incident there.
You know so much about me. And you got a case, bring it. But until that time, step off. Dude.
There was no reason for her even to be in this.
She was like Al Pacino in Heat, which so many people love, and to me it's just so cartoonish. It throws me out of the movie.
Yeah, you sure that wasn't Al Pacino on a wig?
Like, come on, you guys, she don't look that bad.
Hey, Cheeto, come here.
For 70 years old, she looks hot.
I didn't get a scent of a woman from her, is all I'm saying. I didn't smell it at all.
Hey,
Something's going
now
on
if
there.
anybody knows, it's Leon. I think they dated back in the 1800s.
Oh, man, damn. Again.
You have to appreciate the effort it took to crowbar that in.
Get there, I know. It's like,
At least it wasn't crotch services, okay?
no, because that was funny as opposed to what you said.
While that might have not been funny, at least it was new. But the thing about this film is that it does take itself very seriously. I mean, it's
dark and brooding and angry
and full of tension.
Yeah.
It's a pessimistic film.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this movie just has no real hope.
Do not go in here with a date.
Honestly, the 10 minutes in, nothing good is going to come from any of this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The movie is just taking itself so seriously with that darkness that there are certain things that they take away from that they do here that they don't need to do. Like we said, these cops, they don't really interact with each other that much. I mean, they're not really intertwined with each other. They're separate stories, but they keep running. Well, there's a scene every now and then where they're running to each other. It's just like to say, hey, look, they don't know each other, but little do they know that their stories are closer than you think.
Yeah, it's that Magnolia technique where they just coincidentally cross paths at different times.
And it's not the end of the movie where it all comes together in too much of a coincidence that really also takes away from the film. It's a movie where it really does get by on its performances more than anything, because there's so much going on with these three characters that I won't say it's confusing. It's just it's just muddled.
I would agree with you to the point to where it's really more like three separate half movies that are all stitched together, because even the places where they meet could have not been there. Any one of these could have been expanded to its own movie. And what happens is you might dwell on one or two characters for so long, you forget that third one is even in the movie.
I think part of the entertainment value of this is that it keeps moving real fast because you have these 3 different stories going on, and they're all kind of guys who are on the edge.
Sure.
And everything in their life is ramping up. The tension is just going up. They're all in totally untenable situations, and when it all explodes at the end in more or less the same place, I see what you're saying when you say it's implausible, but at the same time, it's like, well, that's why it's a movie. That's why we're telling all these stories at the same time, because it does. It's just kind of in how you look at it. So that didn't bother me.
Yeah, I didn't hate it. It's not anything that bothered me. It's something that I noticed. It's something that made me pause for a moment and say, hey, wait a minute. They really didn't have to do that. But while they did it's kind of clever the way they juggled all the stories and brought them together.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Especially, even if they don't cross over so much in terms of story, they certainly do in terms of tone.
Definitely that. I mean, like I said, they're 3 very intense stories. Although you say they're all 3 in untenable positions. Don Cheadle and Ethan Hawke definitely were. Richard Gere, all he needed to do was pop a Zoloft and quit his job, and he'd have been fine.
Well, his biggest problem was, here's a guy who, he just wants it to be over. It's like cop on the edge of retirement, which cliche, except once again, they do something really different with it than you'd expect, except he doesn't care. He's just given up. He just wants to get out of there. He hasn't given a shit for years about anything. He just does his best to do as little as possible that he has to do, except every once in a while, something comes along that scratches that itch, that don't you remember when you were young and why you got into this in the first place? And this is kind of about that itch is starting to scratch at him, and it's just like almost everything around him is pushing at him. Come on, man. It's your last chance to do something that makes all this time you spent being a cop mean something, anything.
Which is probably why I liked his story the best.
Well, yeah, I mean, his definitely seemed...
It felt like the most rounded to me.
Well, it seemed like he was the guy who was in the most pain, too, and it really convinced me. I mean, everybody else, even with their great performances, you notice, like, okay, they are really acting, though. I'm appreciating this as an actor who's just, like, sinking into it. But Richard Gere, he's more pulled back. He's not, he's not like doing these big dramatic scenes.
Right.
And because of that subtlety, it's like, wow, I think I believe this character more than anybody else. I mean, he's a guy who just does not give a shit anymore. I mean, he sees a woman getting the shit beat out here in the middle of the street, and a cop's trying to stop. He's like, no, let her get her ass beat. It's going to happen again tomorrow.
Yeah, this isn't our precinct. This isn't our precinct, yeah.
He's like, let's go get a sandwich. This woman's like, help! And he's like, good day, man. Protect and serve. This sandwich. But, I mean, and I mentioned this to you guys before. I'm just going to mention it for the sake of this podcast that I did see this over a year ago, almost a year and a half ago, and I think I like it better.
At Sundance, right?
At Sundance, and I think I like it better because it's a tighter and it's a stronger film.
Yeah, they cut 15 minutes from it.
Yeah, and some of the stuff they cut out. Now, whoever said Richard Gere, you did. You were like saying, Cyrus, you did. You were like saying, his performance just wasn't getting me that.
I felt he held back too much, especially towards the end when it's supposed to be more intense, and I just wasn't feeling it as much from him, even though it was written and directed very well.
Well, let me just say that that's editing that was holding him back. Some of the stuff they cut out. They made musical choices that were better. There was more hip hop, and they put a lot more old school music in there. And Richard Gere was one of the worst performances in the movie. I mean, there's a scene where he's getting like, some sexual favors from a woman, and he decides to give this really dramatic dialogue that is just laughable. I mean, his performance is terrible. And I looked at that and I thought, like, wow, they should cut that out. And they did.
Sure enough.
And then, but on top of that, I thought that it had a stronger ending. I mean, if you think this is a very jaded script right now, you should see how the movie ends.
See, and I gotta say, when you told me what that ending was, I hate that ending. That I'm glad they cut it.
And
I'm glad
really
they cut it
like
when they put it with the way they did.
You got to tell me after we're done recording, but yeah,
I'll tell you
curious because I didn't know.
Oh, did I not tell you?
No, you did not tell me. But you balance it. There's the 3 different levels of performance because Cheadle's he's very balanced the whole time. Like you can tell he's really upset, but he's constantly barely holding it in, but in a very like mature way. Ethan Hawke isn't that guy. He ain't holding it in at all. No. He is freaking the fuck out. He's vibrating so much. I'm surprised he's not phasing through stuff. He's like, you know what I mean? He's like screeching at people, and you're still going like, wait, he's telling everyone who will listen, I'm stealing money. I'm corrupt as hell. They're like, oh man, it's gonna be all right.
Well,
God damn it.
Really, what he needed was some of his friends to go like, "Hey, dude, I think Catholicism is not working out for you."
Yeah. No, man, it's I really enjoyed Ethan Hawke in this movie. Now, let me ask you something. I mean, now, Leon, you and I being from the streets,
Is that
By
what
the streets, you mean your house was on the edge of one?
There was a street there, yes.
Hey, there was a green guy who lived in a garbage can on my street.
I mean, how do you expect us to back our nice minivan out if there wasn't a street there?
That's right.
I mean, come on. But no.
And drive out of the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, come on. There had to be a street there, and I was in it.
Man, there were drive-bys all the time. We'd drive by the video store and the fast food
And
place.
the paper boy would drive by in the morning, he'd throw shit in our house.
Oh,
it
man.
was crazy,
That
yo.
dude,
It was
he
crazy.
hit me in my chest one time. I swear I was going to go to the emergency room, but I was kind of a pussy.
I was
back
young.
then, too.
My father was poor. My mother was poor. Butler was poor. The maid was poor. We were poor, man.
Yeah, you know, and I'm thinking about this as I reminisce about the old swimming hole, which we call a pool in the backyard.
Cement pond.
Cement
the
pond.
Olympic-sized swimming pool. We called the swimming hole.
Filled with money as I dived into it like Scrooge McDuck. But being from the streets, I want to know.
Yeah, you're as for the streets as Kadeem Hardison was in a whole new world.
I had to drive my
A different world.
Back then, I had to drive my SUV uphill through the snow both ways.
Well, my driver did.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, Corey Huxtable, tell us about the streets.
Yeah, I was about to say Kadeem Hardison. He was a little too rough for me. You know, I was more like Will Smith's cousin from The Fresh Prince, Carlton. Yeah, and even then, Carlton kind of scares me sometimes. But then you're not from being from the street. Now, did it seem like sometimes that they were trying too hard to talk street? I mean, because like I can't tell you how many times like Don Cheadle was like, "Yo, B, we gonna do this, B. We gotta get this money, B. You gotta get off these streets, B. You gotta do this, B." And y'all can stop.
Well, the guy's name was B, so fair enough.
was it B?
No. There's a lot of talk back and forth between him and Wesley Snipes. That's all that kind of language and its code. And there were times when listening to it, it felt like, all right, you guys, you're doing a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Then I stopped and thought about it, about a bunch of guys I know, and I'm like, no, they talk just like that. To where I'm usually shaking my head and like, man, you guys are clowns.
At the same time, I felt like watching Don Cheadle, as good as he was in this, if we didn't know from the beginning that he was an undercover cop, I never would have bought him as a gangster. You're going, yeah, there's something about him is just a little too old for this. He's just a little too, I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, what about that scene where Don Cheadle comes up and says, "Hey, Holmes," and Wesley Snipes like, "Yo, pity pow on the fitty tay." You remember that scene?
That was in Pootie Tang. That was not this movie.
I got my black street people mixed up, but they all look alike to me. But
Oh boy. The only black guy I know scared by black people.
are they gone yet? But no, man. Like I said, I like the movie. I think it has some really strong performances. Narratively, I think it's very weak. I think it's actually hindered by too much going on. And I'm not saying that they couldn't have handled that, but I think as much as I thought it was really cool the way they brought the stories together, I think that if they had just pulled back on that element a little bit, just a little bit more, they would have had a stronger film. So I give it a really low matinee.
It's funny. I from when you were talking about this earlier, I would have thought you were stronger about it.
Yeah, me too.
I really loved this movie, and even with the problems I saw with it, I mean, maybe it's because right now I'm really into crime comics, but it felt like that sort of thing. It was like really dark, thick, noirish type stuff with characters whose stories aren't going to end well from the beginning, and I just really enjoyed this on all levels. This is a full price to me.
Okay.
I gotta say, I mean, I don't think it's a great movie. It's hard to not make that Training Day comparison, but that was just so more singular in its vision, and this spread itself so thin that it keeps it from being great. However, great performances, and that the way they kept up that intensity all the way through. I feel like if I told somebody, I mean, I'm going low full price because I feel like if I told somebody, hey, pay full price to see it, I don't think they're going to come back disappointed.
Yeah, no, you make a good point. I mean, it's nowhere near a perfect movie, but it is good, more than good enough to be a full price.
Yeah.
I feel like, and that's exactly what I have to say.
I mean, I'm saying low full price because I'm like,
So you're wrong, Corey. How do you feel about that?
I'm surprised you said low matinee.
Hey,
I thought
man, y'all quit jumping up on me. Yo, man, back up or I'll put a cap in your ass.
B.
Leon, shoot this motherfucker.
I don't want God's forgiveness. I want his help.